We're going to show you the homes that we first lived in and the houses our babies were born in. Up right here on the corner is the Elmore Apartments. That was our first home when we were first married in February of 1950. This is also where Dennis Murphy was born, right by the place where we first lived and where Denny was born. But here it is, right here, the Elmore Apartments. Our apartment was right up there on the second floor. When we lived here, Ed was called to the Navy and served in Korea, and Denny and I had to leave and go live in a boarding house. This is the house at 1116 7th Avenue North that Denny and I lived at when Ed was in Korea. See that little room upstairs? That was our bedroom. The people that owned the house, his name was Patterson. After Denny and I flew to San Diego to be with Ed when he returned from Korea, we came back to Great Falls in November of 1950, and we lived in this little house at 3318 3rd Avenue North. After a while, Ed was discharged and he came home and he lived here with Denny and I. So we all three lived together in this little house, 3318 3rd Avenue North. Denny used to play outside on the lawn here. In the house where Shauna was born, 2800 2nd Avenue South. This is it right here. We lived in a beautiful basement apartment in this house. The people that owned it was Chuck and Betty Ludet. They had a little girl named Debbie that used to play with Denny. After we left 2800 2nd Avenue South, this is 2210 4th Avenue South. This is a house that we lived in with Denny and Shauna. Shauna was about 18 months old when we lived here. By the way, at the Elmore Apartments where Denny was born, that was September 10th, 1950. Shauna was born at 2800 on January 8th, 1953. House, Denny used to run outside and play little tricks on the high school kids when they came home from school. And some of the neighbors complained. He always had such a good time. This is another view of 22 4th Avenue South. Where I'm showing you now is now called Parkdale Homes. We lived here in March of 1955 when it was called Bill Holt Homes. Timothy Patrick Murphy was born here. This complex was located in the 1600 block on 6th Avenue South. So in 1955, we lived in this housing complex called Boland Villa. We moved here when Tim was about 6 months old. The unit right to the back is the one we lived in. We used to tie Tim with a rope to the door and he would play out in the yard so he wouldn't get in the street. When we lived here, we had a lot of friends that lived here. We also had a fire when we lived here, and it scared Shauna to death. We eventually had to move because Shauna couldn't cope with it. She was only 2.5, 3 years old. Showing you is right across the street from where we lived at Bowen Villa. There used to be an ice rink here, right about here. And Denny tried ice skating, which didn't work at all. He just couldn't keep his legs together long enough to stand up. Avenue. Shortly after the fire at Bowen Villa, Shauna couldn't cope anymore. And I think this was about 1957. We moved here. And this is where Eddie was born. April 23rd, 1958. The kids used to have a great time playing out in the backyard. The girl that lived right next door, right there, was my babysitter. One night I got so scared I was home alone and I had her come over and babysit me and the kids. Shauna got the mumps here real bad when we lived in this house. I had a bridge party and one of the people at playing bridge got the mumps. From 2518 Central, we moved here, 2509 7th Avenue North. This is where the lived here. Denny and Shauna went to school at St. Gerard School, which was pretty close to our house. I also had a nursery school when I lived here. First I had it in another place that I rented, and then I moved the school to the house. Shauna didn't like that very well because the kids kept getting in her bedroom. August of 1960, we purchased this home. It was pink then, it's blue now. And this is where Kelly Jo was born. Kelly walked here, ran across the street here, got into trouble here. Denny, Sean, and Tim went to Morningside School. Dad built a beautiful woven fence in the backyard after we moved here. If you can think of something I should say. This is the house we bought in 1969. We lived here until 1980. The kids were going to St. Mary's School. Kelly went to Whittier School. They went to Great Falls High School. A lot of outdoor barbecues and good parties at this house. The kids met a lot of friends. We had a lot of friends in and out of the house all the time. Shortly after Kelly was married is when we sold this house. And Ed and I moved to an apartment, Dad and I. Yes, the sun is in the way, but the Dairy Queen was right across the street from where we lived. So we made frequent trips over there.